If you want to lift up humanity, power women. It's the most comprehensive, pervasive, high leverage investment that you can make in human beings.
Welcome to Lead Like a Girl, where we are empowering everyday women through our stories. I'm your host, Jessica Smith, and I began this journey by sharing my life story. Now, I've joined forces with my longtime friends, Jamie and Coralyn, to keep this party going. We met many years ago as young sales girls in our 20s, driven and quickly rising to the top of our industry. As the years went on, life happened, and we all found ourselves in new companies and completely different industries, still striving for success in it all. Career, family, faith, fun. Now, it wasn't easy, but we never stopped moving. Get ready for our real conversations, inspiring stories, and our big life lessons as we share it all. The good, the bad, and the funny. Welcome to Lead Like a Girl.
Welcome back to another episode of Lead Like a Girl, where we are empowering everyday women through our stories. All the good, the bad, and the funny. Right, ladies?
Yes.
What do you think? Do you think that there's more good, bad, or funny? Where do you think we land on that ratio?
I try to be more funny. I try. So.
Try. It lands mostly.
I would say funny, then good, then bad.
Not as much bad.
Yeah, we're pretty positive. I like it.
Yep. Well, I'm your host today, Coralyn, and I've got my two best friends, one from Iowa, Jamie, and my other one from Atlanta, Georgia, Jessica. And we have a fourth voice, which I'm going to introduce here. But Allison, welcome to our show. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
She's from Denver, Colorado. How's the weather there today?
Well, we actually just had a ton of rain. I was nervous that there's going to be too much noise because I'm, in my car waiting for my kids in sports, but it cleared up. Sun's out.
Such a great mom role. It's like you're Uber, but without any pay.
Exactly.
There's so much you can get done, though, when you're sitting in your car, like waiting for your kids to get done with sports. I can't even tell you. I think I've done book club, finished work.
I mean, I've planned meetings in the parking lot and put my computer.
Truly.
I do feel like I'm going to give myself a significant back issue because I'm trying to type on my center console and my seat doesn't go back as far as I want it to. It's just very not ergonomically correct, and I might have an issue.
You guys are making me feel better about never being there at all.
Oh, about the sport. You're like, you're just going to have to. You're going to have to swim yourself to your own swim meet. Like, this is not happening.
I mean, there's always someone around here to do it. And it sounds like you guys are there anyway. You're in the car. So I feel much better. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You actually shocked me when you said you had to run one night to go bring your son to golf practice. And I was like, who is this lady?
Yeah.
There was a little stint that you.
Yeah. And that was, I've been taking kids to this for this many years. And I'm like, you might as well not stop now, dude. Like, I got you do. Thank you for reminding me of that. It was painful. And golf at that. Yes.
All right. Well, ladies, we are diving into a semi-serious topic today. I had the pleasure of being gifted a book called The Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates by my sister-in-law, Allison, who is joining us today to talk about it. And I tell you, this book hit me. It's very relevant for what we're doing. So this whole episode, listeners, we're going to dive a little bit of an education piece on some issues, global issues in terms of women empowerment, but share some stories, but then also some takeaways and how it's relevant for how we do life here in the States and maybe inspire some action in different ways, depending on what we get into. But really the premise of the book, her heartbeat is when you lift women, you lift humanity. And it's very deep in some respects and very simple in other respects. But really what she says is the single most important investment we can make is in women empowerment. And for too long, we've just overlooked ourselves or we've been overlooked, our talent, our creativity, our potential. Even she mentions in the book about world leaders are actually taking note that, oh my gosh, like this is an untapped market and a group of people that we have not paid attention to. The economies and the countries that have women empowerment have economic development, they're flourishing. And so it's statistically shows that in countries where they value women's input, they do better. The results are very, very profound. Communities get stronger, economies grow faster, and children have better futures, more development. So all the way around the world, it's better. So that's our topic for today. But before we dive into that, you guys know I'd like to start off on a little lighter note. I have a first minute fast question for us to talk about. So the question I want to ask you guys is, what is a random job or something that you notice, like notice that some woman was doing a job or a task or something like that, that you looked at it like, I am so surprised that she did that so well. Like maybe it's traditionally like a male role or something like that, that you were just kind of surprised that, oh my gosh, I can't believe she knocked it out of the park, and she's a woman. Like it did a really great job.
I got one. So, my best friend since 7th grade, you guys know Rosemary. When I heard, and she's a girly girl, like we were girly girls and makeup and all of that kind of stuff. When I heard that she was truck driving, like semi truck driving.
Rosemary is like a little tiny person also.
Yes.
I mean, and she's a little taller now,
a very
but
polished looking woman as well.
Yeah. And I'm like, you're doing what? And there was a little period of time where I hadn't seen her for years. So I was blown away. And I was just like, I'm so confused. Like, do you mean like you're in the passenger seat, or you're like, and
she's like honking the horn when kids are driving past.
Yeah. So he did that. And we're talking about across the country. We're not talking about local truck driving. And, you know, I remember her even calling me sometimes when it's like in the middle of a snowstorm, or I was just like, I have no clue. Like I would never in a million years do that. So that's a perfect example. And she loved it and she crushed it and she made a ton of money doing it as well.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that.
I don't know
Rosemary.
if I knew that about her.
Yeah.
For
That's
years.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. This isn't necessarily like, it wasn't something where I expected a man to be doing it, but it was like a surprise what her position was. But when I got recruited to the job that I have now, the recruiter told me that the person interviewing me was essentially like an HR type person. And he's like, I remember him specifically saying, she's in an HR position, but she's a decision maker. So, you know, like make sure you're on your top of your game or whatever. So had a great conversation with her, a great interview. Fast forward, she's the boss. She's the boss of everything. Like she is like division sales manager. And the thing that's super cool about it, so she's an engineer. All the people I work with are engineers. All the top leadership positions, they all, like a lot of the people report to her. I've had a bunch of different salespeople that report to her who have like confided in me and said, I am so scared of her. Like, she's so smart. She's so this and that. Do you know who I text on the weekends? Her. We're talking about what we're doing at the house and just like chatting or whatever. Very, very just an awesome leader, you know, super smart, just encouraging, you know what I mean? And I love it. And she's the only female in the room with the leadership team. But the fact that, and I don't even know if she knows that. I don't even know if I've told her that the initial conversation was, she's like someone in HR, but you know, it's the first interview, just, you know.
Yeah.
Great.
Really?
You're going to get.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I love that everyone's scared of her too. It's like amazing. I'm like, yeah, really?
I mean, you just throw a little fear in there, make it
I know.
well-rounded.
All the dudes are scared of her. I love it.
Allison, you got something?
Well, yeah, I was trying to think of something, and honestly, I was like, well, I'm never surprised when women can crush it, because we should be able to do anything.
That's
but
the best answer, right?
I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But no, I was thinking about when I was living in Panama, and I was living in a rural community in Panama, and one of our neighbors, who was a single mom, was working in agriculture. And so she had several plots of land and was growing produce and then bringing it in to market. And so she had some local kids working for her, and she herself transported everything in to markets to be sold, which was very impressive that she was doing that on her own, not under a man or alongside a man, and that she was working in agriculture, which is typically male predominant. Yeah, she was crushing it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think, I mean, just very recently, I was at a Habitat for Humanity build, and I work with all dudes. They're all like very much engineers and do-it-yourselfers. And so we show up to the job site, and our crew leader is this little spitfire of a lady. And the guys are asking her questions, and she's just like not skipping a beat, like knows what's going on. This is what we're gonna do today. She's showing the guys like on the blueprints, like here's what we're doing. And kind of halfway through the job, we actually found out that the crew that had built some of the wall, two of the walls actually, before we were there, they weren't plumb. The walls were off by, and it was literally about a half an inch on either side, which sounds very insignificant. But I'm like, is that even that big of a deal coming from me? I'm like, I don't know much about anything in terms of building houses. And they're like, and the guys are like, yeah, it's a big deal. If it's a half an inch down here, it can be, maybe an inch or two or three up at the top as you start building. So it's really important to have them straight. So we actually had to hold the phone, go back, and actually, unfortunately, tell all the guys that we need to undo what we just did and redo it. Yeah. But she handled it really well and all the things. And I think the punchline, which you kind of stole it from me, Allison, was that it was kind of a trick question, because I feel like all four of us and many of our listeners know that there really isn't anything girls, like we shouldn't be surprised what girls can or can't do, right? Like we're all very much capable and very much in a power. But the challenge is that sometimes our girls here and all around the world are not given the same chance. They're not given the same opportunity, and they are being held down for different rules, different society, different cultural things. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, as how can we do a better job empowering people and spreading the word that there are girls out there that aren't given the same opportunities to live and thrive like we are. Before we get into that though, we have a fourth voice here today, and I wanted to give her a little bit of an opportunity to introduce herself. Allison, I will out as my sweet sister-in-law. She is married to my husband's brother. So I don't have any sisters. So I married into this family, and I got a couple sisters, 3 sisters actually, out of my marriage. And Allison is one of my near and dear sister-in-laws. But so I would say, Allison, you're not coming in as a particular expert necessarily on paper, but you have so much lived experience in terms of drive and travel and desire to see the world. Can you share a little bit about like some of your adventures and what inspires you to travel and do the things that you do and kind of live the life that you have?
Gosh. Well, I wasn't prepared for that. I don't know. I mean, I think
you didn't send her an email for this.
Well, you can just tell us about you a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I do think
your resume, please.
Right. She's got a pretty sweet resume.
No, that's not true. But yeah, I think from a very young age, I just had that in me, the curiosity for other cultures and other people. And so I didn't necessarily start at a young age. I grew up in Minnesota, which is very undiverse, can we say? But I still had that curiosity in me. Yeah. But I had that curiosity in me. And so when I was a senior in high school, I became a foreign exchange student and lived in Honduras for the first semester of my senior year. That just grew then within me. And actually, I always had an interest in just helping people, I guess. This idea of wanting to live in service, I guess, whether it's a public servant or in development. So I was also very interested in the Peace Corps very young. So I did research on that when I was even in high school, and then traveled after I graduated high school. Actually took time off before I went to college and traveled, and then was in the Peace Corps for 2 years, lived in Panama. And then once had kids, obviously, when they were young, that stifled some of that a little bit. But then when my youngest should have gone into kindergarten, we decided to homeschool, and we traveled for 3 years and went, kind of all over the world and all over the country, and then have continued that, not at that same level. Our kids are back in school now, but still traveling, and very interested.
What
And
did you do when you were traveling?
We homeschooled our kids, and then my husband works in real estate, so has a very flexible schedule, and we rented our house out on Airbnb. He usually would have my husband's schedule, around the holidays, not much is happening in real estate. So we would usually leave around Thanksgiving time and then come back the beginning of March, and we would go to usually about 3 countries a year during that time. And a few of those as we as we continued, we started doing service projects with traveling, just understanding that that was really how we were going to get to know the culture best. So we also would work and do some projects wherever we went.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. I'm
Yeah.
curious, when you think about this topic and empowering women and Coralyn, when you think about other places where they're thriving because their culture is a little different than ours, where are some places that you've been where you've kind of witnessed both ends of the spectrum, where women were way on this side versus other places where you saw women really being empowered in their environment?
Yeah, gosh, that's tricky because it's so multi-layered, obviously, and I think it depends on how deep you're able to get into the culture, whether you're traveling through or you're spending time there. And obviously, I think the extent of understanding a culture would probably be best for me in Panama because I spent 2 years there. So being able to really pull back what that looks
Okay.
like. And I'd say that this idea of gender and development and women in development isn't necessarily new. And Melinda Gates, obviously, as she started working in this in her foundations and the work that they were doing, came upon something that has been known for a while, that we need to include women in the conversation if we are going to see sustainable results anywhere. But yeah, I mean, obviously, and I think it would probably come as no surprise that, you go to somewhere in the Nordic countries and you're going to feel a lot of probably gender equality. And then you go somewhere in Africa and, you're going to feel very differently about what you're seeing. And you're also there to observe, especially in those places and times. So it's tricky to pass a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, and the point of it is not to come in as some big change agent necessarily, but a key theme in her book is coming alongside people in their culture so you can get close enough to have a relationship and really listen. I think is one of my big takeaways from the story, from her book, is it's not just a bombardment of fact, solution. This is what we have to do. But it's actually her taking time enough to dive deep into these women's stories, who actually she was. I feel it interesting when the book opens up. She talks about her intention was actually just to share about why people should get vaccinated, and so she's coming into these cultures with like agenda A. And then as she gets to listen and slow down and hear the stories, is like, actually, we have a lot of different needs and they go deeper, but you wouldn't know that if you were just on a superficial level, which is also why I thought, Allison, you'd be a great add to this conversation, because you have taken the time and been intentional with your travel, like not staying in the bougiest of hotels and staying withdrawn from a lot of the deep culture, but you've taken that opportunity to go intentionally with your family to serve along all of these different cultures and really soak up relationship building, impact, and just seeing what it does look like to really live outside of the States.
I think that there's one quote. It just kind of speaks to what you were just saying, Coralyn. I just wanted to mention it. She said, their cup is not empty. You can't just pour your ideas into it. Their cup is already full. So you just have to understand what is in their cup. It was a metaphor for respecting people's knowledge, agency, and culture before trying to, like, quote unquote, help. But it kind of speaks to like just being curious and understanding, like, if you want to help, like, how can you help in the right way? What do people actually need to help? I think that has a little bit to do with what you were saying. It's just understanding the culture, understanding what the need is, not just throwing something at someone that you think they need, but let's figure out a way to actually help.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit, because I'm sure there's maybe someone listening, but the person that we're talking about, right? Like, this is a very powerful, rich, privileged woman. So tell me, is there moments in the book where, I don't know if this is the right words, where we see her in a different light, more of, because again, I get you're speaking from a woman's standpoint, but it's a lot different when you're rich and powerful. So is there a point in the book where she gives you a different view of herself?
Here's a couple points that I would have to say is that in learning a little bit more about Melinda Gates, and I think that she has a little bit of maybe a semi controversial reputation, whether if people like her or not. But she talks about in the book where she grows up as just like a normal Catholic school kid. She was a computer software writer, an engineer, a computer engineer. But it wasn't until she was at this little school that a random nun that had worked for the school system decided that it was, and it was an all girls Catholic school, that she had heard about, that there were computers out there.
Oh my
And
God, I wrote this down.
yeah. And so this nun took a step of faith and took a boldness and said, I want to get 6 computers for our school. And so she had this, again, a moment of lift where somebody outside of her sphere just advocated for her and for her classmates to have computers for the first time. So she was gifted in that capacity. She went to the university and talks about a little bit how she had mentors in her in college, and her professors that were pouring into her, and then just kind of opportunity after opportunity of people lifting her up, because she took a step and moved into an extremely male dominated industry where people were betting on her, right? But I also think, to answer your question, the human side of her, and maybe Allison, you've got some things to say about this too, but I think the theme of her coming up in this book, and she constantly references the fact that she's here, and she acknowledges it many times. I'm here from the States. I'm a wealthy person. What do I have to offer these women? And how am I sitting here when they're just, these women are, she has so much privilege and so much access and so much opportunity where she's coming from.
Yes.
She's learning so many different things from people who have just been through so many different levels of
That's what I'm
hardships
looking
that she
for.
can't even wrap her head around, right?
That's what I'm looking for. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what I was looking for, which is I'm always looking for someone to acknowledge their privilege, because as a woman and as a woman of color, that is a big peeve of mine when people don't acknowledge their privilege. And that's what I was asking without asking it. And I like that you said that she acknowledges it. And then she says, how can I use my privilege and my power to be able to help the cause? Because just like, we need allies, no matter what you are or what community or your culture, we need allies. And so I love that you said that. And I love that she acknowledges that through the book, and that she is using her privilege for the better good of all women.
Allison, do you agree with that? What is your take on
Yeah, absolutely. I do. And,
Melinda?
to be honest, I read this book, I think right when it came out. So probably 6 years ago. So when Coralyn invited me, I'm like, gosh, I need to like refresh myself on the book. And I loved it. And it really resonated with me and changed. I mean, it wasn't really new information to me at the time, but it just landed so deeply and right on the soft spot of my heart and all the things that I'm passionate about. And I knew, Coralyn, that I thought you would feel the same way about it when I gifted it to you. But anyway, today I was refreshing myself on the book, and I was listening to some of the podcasts that Melinda did when promoting the book. And that was one thing that she recognized about herself in a lot of the podcasts, and particularly when the one she did with Oprah, is the privilege that she has, not only from, the wealth, but just being, a white cis woman in the world, and the privilege she has. But I think that the book is so much bigger than that. And what she really does is highlights the stories of women from all over the world. And it's, these anecdotes from everywhere of what women are living. So, and then she takes it a step further, I think, in the chapter where she's speaking more specifically to maybe women in the States, and just talking about her having to advocate in her own marriage for just like the division of labor and like unpaid labor, and the fact that, a lot, she stepped out of the workforce for a bit and then back in, but that, hey, Bill can take the kids to school sometimes too. Like, this is what I do is just as valuable as what he does. And so she talks about that a little bit too. And like, if I'm encouraging all these other women to step up and to be vulnerable and courageous in these different ways, that I need to do it as well, and look at where I need to do that in my own life.
Yeah, she talked about women shoulder the majority of unpaid labor, childcare, cooking, cleaning, whatever. And she had said, women are labeled as just as, right? I'm just a housewife. I'm just this. I'm just that. We shouldn't be just as, right? We can be all the things. But I also loved the other quote: how can we create a moment of lift in human hearts so that we all want to lift up women, because sometimes that's all that's needed to lift women up, is to stop pulling them down. It's just a reminder that empowerment is not just about positive actions, but also removing the obstacles and harm. She totally recognizes her, her, that she's a rich lady, and just, but what can she do? How can she help? What, and she also talked about just living in the United States. Like, we have access to vaccines, we have access to medicine, and
Yeah.
talking about going to other countries, and they walk, kilometers to be able to just get a shot for their kids. And yeah, I don't know. I think there's like 1,000 tidbits of really good information, really good things to learn from it.
Yeah, I'm hearing a couple things. First thing I'm hearing is, even though women in the States, we may complain about a lot of things and things could be better, there's a lot of women in other places that have it a lot worse than we do. So that's the 1st thing.
Mhm.
And really understanding and getting some exposure to what those things are. And then the other thing I'll say too, and sometimes I get kicked out of girls' clubs when I say this, but
You say that. You haven't been kicked out of this girls' club yet.
well, because, the first thing I'll say is, before we can start asking people to lift us up, we need to lift ourselves up. And that's the challenge I have with women. I'm in so many rooms that I don't see the boldness, I don't see the confidence, I don't see the belief in yourself, but we're asking other people to believe in us. And that's the challenge I have. I'm saying, let's go back a step. But I just think there's some work within that we need to do also. And then that's going to allow us to come together and empower one another. But it's got to kind of start with us first. We got to start in the mirror.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pivot to a little bit of a topic here that she dives into here. Health is an issue. There is a maternal mortality rate that in developing countries, moms are dying during childbirth at 3 or 4 times the rate in a developed country. I think the statistics here I have are, there are, in a low or middle income country, the mother mortality rate is 346 deaths per 100,000 birth, with only 10 in a developed country. So it's just, it's astronomically different. And I think that, and the same thing with education, right? That girls, if they're responsible for housework and chores and going to get water, and they're seen as less than, so the boys don't get an opportunity, don't have to do that, and it's always the girls having to make these sacrifices. They are foundationally and systematically being oppressed, right? And so the interesting thing for me is that, Allie, have you seen that in terms of like where you have traveled to? Have you seen in the developing countries that you've been to where this has been an issue, or have you seen that in your travels?
Yeah, it plays out a lot of places, and sometimes I think it's not as overt as you might realize. So even, the idea of women maybe not pursuing education as high as boys do, because most likely they're just gonna end up in the house. They're gonna end up rearing children and doing those tasks. So even in the communities that maybe I lived in Latin America, where if a girl gets pregnant early and young as a teenager, here it would be heavy, right? Like all the maybe missed opportunity or the challenges that would lie in front of her if she wanted to like reach her full potential in having to raise a child and do that at the same time. Where in maybe some of these countries, it's like, well, you get to be a mom, that's what you were going to do anyway. And so there's not this like heaviness around it in the same way. So yeah, you might not see it as overtly, but it's there. There's this undertone of, of achievement and what can be done if you're a female.
Which I think that it plays into the other part of the book that she talks about, is that this whole issue is that they, in a lot of developing countries, women don't even have a seat at the table. And there's a lack of opportunity, there's a lack of education. They're not even sometimes even a part of the pool, let alone not being chosen. Like they're just not given the opportunity. And it creates this imbalance when you talk about the statistics of developing countries being able to thrive when there's equal opportunity, women's voices shared. I remember I wanted to share a story. I had an opportunity to travel to Honduras for my work, and it was for a women's empowerment program through an organization called Convoy of Hope. And we were going on a vision trip. So just looking, listening, learning, meeting just the different people from their program. And one of the things that they had shared in this particular community is that as women get older, they kind of age out of the workforce sooner than you probably would, that we would think in the States. The women that I was working with or meeting were probably 30, 35, 40, but they still had young kids, but it was the ability to find a job was very, very difficult. So this organization came in and offered entrepreneurship training. So business plan development, sharing with them and talking with them about what is it that you're passionate about? What are the things that you can do? How can we create a job? And they came alongside these women to help them write a business plan. And once that was finished, if it was plausible and they could deliver it, they would give them seed money. And the interesting thing is that the seed money, you would think like in the States, it would be, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, $100,000 to start a business. In a lot of the cases, these women were getting $200 to buy flour for their baking or buy an oven or something like that, where it was just very, very simple. And these women were not only working alongside each other to help develop their businesses in these groups, but also seeing their businesses thrive. And so the culmination of this whole trip is we got to see a dedication. So they had 10 different women up there who had all started their own businesses, some over a shoe store, convenience store, bakery. And the women were at the second level funding. So their businesses were already established and they had applied for a second round of funding. So another $200 or $300. And they were awarded these items that they had applied for. And not only to see the joy on their faces that they had, where their businesses were succeeding, but every single one of them had children in the audience that were just beaming, watching their mom be awarded this thing. And I feel like my takeaway from that whole experience, well, many takeaways, but one of it is that it doesn't seem like it's that complicated. I feel like it just was so impactful and empowering for this community of people. And the impact for generations will be there. So, as we look at the this book, do you have any other takeaways from this from your reading of this book, or what is it like? What are other things that it starts you?
I think we've touched on some of them. I think one of the big themes is listening. Hearing people's stories is so important. And then this idea of walking with, not before, like not ahead or behind, like pushing, not pulling, but being a companion kind of through is so important for anyone that you're trying to, enter in and help. So yeah, the idea of anything really starting with empathy. First of all, like the reason that we enter into lives and to listen to stories is to feel that empathy and then being drawn in from there. Yeah. And I think this idea that we all, no matter where we are, we need champions. We need someone, no matter who we are or where we are, someone has laid groundwork for us to get to where we are. And we all need that. And so, recognizing just the cheerleaders and the people that we have had in our lives that have helped us get us to where we are, and that other people, that's what we all need on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that is kind of where my mind was in terms of the biggest takeaway. And listen, you guys have heard me say this before. When I think about all of my success, from coming from being a teen mom on the streets to where I am today, I wish that I had more women that supported me, because reality is if not the majority of my success has been through support and mentorship of men. And so I'm thankful, but it's still a little disheartening. And so for me, it's always about I help anyone. I have mentees that are, men, but for the most part, it is making sure that I'm always opening those doors. I'm always pouring into other women just because I wish there were more women that were pouring into me as I've gone through, my different transitions of life.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, my takeaway, some of it came from the author, speaking about just being very fortunate and feeling that because she's fortunate, she does feel the obligation to help others, and that we should help in whatever way we can. And just going back to that quote of listening and figuring out what is the right way to help. If you want to help someone, figure out what is the right way to help someone. I remember when I was in North Carolina, had a loved one who was going through cancer, had a farm, I was working. It's a really super stressful time in my life. And I had a friend who said, what do you need? And I'm like, honestly, I need a bale of hay. I don't want to go drive to the farm store and get a bale of hay and make my car dirty, but I need one because I have to feed my goats. And I was like, that's what I need today. Like, you could have made me a meal, you could have brought me groceries, you could have done whatever, but what I actually need was a bale of hay. And my friend and I had a joke forever after that. Just like, she'd say, do you need a bale of hay? I'm like, yes. So I think that's just kind of a little bit of the takeaway for me. If you want to help others, figure out what they actually need.
Yeah.
Be curious and find out what they actually need. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a monetary thing. It could be your time. But I definitely felt inspired after this.
You
So
reminded
thanks a
me
lot
of-
for bringing this up.
Yeah, you reminded me of something, and hopefully I didn't get it mixed up with something else, but I feel like something that I read talked about her sharing about being in an abusive relationship. Am I on the right? Okay.
Prior to her marriage to Bill Gates.
Yes. And the reason I bring that up is because I also appreciate her sharing that and being vulnerable, because I think it's easy for people to just see you as the person that you are today and not understand that we all have a past. We all, doesn't matter our economic status, we all go through shit at the end of the day. And so that part I forgot to mention, that I did appreciate the fact that she was vulnerable, she shared it, and that was another place where I felt like that was like humanizing this person as we view them and their perspective. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
I would say my takeaway from after reading this book was I think it's the opportunity, or the idea that we're not trying to send all these girls into the workforce. Like these girls, like all these girls in the development have to have lives that look like ours, and they're missing out because their lives don't look exactly like us. They don't have all the same opportunities that we do have in the States. But I think the repetitive theme that I heard from this book is that just having the opportunity to have choice is just to have, yes, I want to have children, or no, I don't. Yes, I want to grow up and go to school, or no, I'd rather be a stay-at-home mom and skip the school. But I think that the challenges and the opportunity that we have is to give these girls a choice in how they want to live. And I think that that's the difference between sometimes, and not to make it an us versus them, but we have a lot of opportunity, a lot of choice in how we decide to live out our lives. And a lot of people are just handed this is what's going to happen, whether it's, child marriage, or you get sick, or you get pregnant, or all the different things. Like, there's just not a lot of choice. And so when they can choose, they have power, and that's how they can thrive. I just wanted to end with this I have this quote from the book, and this is what she talks about, just some of her realization. And she says, when women can use our talent and energy, we begin to speak in our own voices for our own values, and that makes everybody's life better. And she says again, she's like, again, if you want to lift up humanity, power women. It's the most comprehensive, pervasive, high leverage investment that you can make in human beings. And she ends this chapter with asking a question. And she says, what do you know now in a deeper way than a way that you knew before? So I would leave our listeners with that question: is there a thought, a comment, a topic that left you with a deeper understanding of how other people live around the world? and let us know about that. Send us a DM, message us on our socials. If anything resonated with you, or if you want to read the book, it's called The Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates. I'm sure you can get it on anywhere you find books, but it is a very powerful read. And again, we are on all social media. You can see us on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook.